Now on Mississippi Insight.
That's the position of President Trump at this point, and I think it's a good negotiating position. I would have urged the president to adopt that if he had asked me, in my opinion.
Senator Roger Wicker offers a spirited defense of President Donald Trump's pick for Pentagon chief and the administration's border and global policies. Our in-depth interview with the Mississippi senator is straight ahead, and Governor Tate Reeves' State of the State address focuses on momentum and taxation. We'll highlight the key parts this week on Mississippi. I'm Thao Ta, broadcasting and podcasting this week for Byron Brown. Thank you so much for joining us for this February 2nd edition of Insight. Well, now perhaps more than ever, Mississippi's two Republican senators in Washington have tremendous clout in both domestic and international affairs. Last week, Byron featured his interview with our junior senator, Cindy Hyde-Smith. Now the senior senator, Roger Wicker, has offered his thoughts on a wide range of topics. We spoke with the Senate's Armed Forces Chairman Monday, 3 days after the confirmation of President Trump's defense nominee. Let's discuss Pete Hegseth and his confirmation as Secretary of Defense. So you were a big supporter of his during his confirmation hearings. Why do you think he's the right fit to lead the Pentagon?
Well, he's the right fit because he's President Trump's choice to sort of bring a disruptive change to the Department of Defense and to the whole Pentagon. We've seen that over the years, it's become very bureaucratic, very creaky and slow. We need somebody to actually shake things up there. And I think Pete Hegseth is going to do that. I think people watching the hearing saw that he's very smart. He's very quick on his feet. And so, you know, plenty of brain power there. Also, he knows how the troops feel. He is a retired major from the Army National Guard. He's been deployed in combat zones several times. He knows what that means to people who've been under stress like that. He's had some problems himself coming back and coming away from the combat zones back into society. And so I think he's got empathy, he's got understanding. He wants us to pursue the Peace Through Strength program that President Trump campaigned on. And so I think he's a good choice. He's a different, non-conventional choice, just like President Trump was when he came down that escalator in 2015.
So let me ask you, Pete Hegseth has only had managerial experience over a couple of veterans advocacy groups and a few dozen employees. So as Defense Secretary, he'll administrate a department with about 3.4 million service members. What makes you think, again, that he will be up to that task?
Well, I think based on the hearing, as I said, but also, you know, there was a question at the hearing about how many people he had supervised in various positions. And that's apart from the people that he had supervised as a major in combat zones. But it turns out that in questioning, it was quite clear he had actually supervised more people than most members of the House or Senate. So I don't think, and certainly we've had senators and former members of the House of Representatives before serve as secretaries of defense and also secretaries of other very large departments. So I don't think that's a problem. It's a question that was raised by some Democrats on the committee who were doubtful about the nomination, and I think he answered that quite satisfactorily.
But Senator Wicker, not 3.4 million people, though.
Okay, well, look, I've given my answer to this. If you'd like to debate me, well, come on up to Washington. But I've answered your question twice now, so perhaps you're not going to get a different answer the third time.
Okay, let's move on. Then you also have a role on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. You have a role on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. So Tulsi Gabbard awaits a hearing there on her nomination as National Intelligence Director. Is she the right person for that job, given her sympathies for Russia and Vladimir Putin?
Right. The Intelligence Committee is a committee that I sit on as chairman of the Armed Services Committee. I'm not a voting member of that committee, so I will not have a vote on that. But I do plan to attend the hearing. I think that's scheduled for Thursday of this week. And let me just say, I expect that I will vote for all, if not most, of the president's nominees. And I do know that a number of my colleagues have actually served in the House of Representatives with Representative Gabbard when she was a Democratic member from Hawaii. And they think a lot of her. She does have military service, quite a few years on up toward having her 20 years of retirement. So I think she got a lot of support there. I know there's some members who have questions about some of the positions she took when she was a fairly liberal Democratic member of the House of Representatives. Those will probably be resolved. But again, my default position is to support most, if not all, of the president's nominations. I hope to meet with her this week, and that will give me some more information.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that. Now let's take a look at U.S. policy on Russia's war against Ukraine. So President Trump has said he could end the war in his first day in office. So that obviously has not happened. Should we expect the president to maintain military support for Ukraine, even as he seeks to broker a deal directly with Vladimir Putin?
Right. Well, you know, the president has said that he believes that because of his foreign policy positions over 4 years, which was really strong leadership and the strength that it takes to keep us out of wars, we would never have seen that invasion, that illegal invasion by Vladimir Putin's Russia into Ukraine. And I know he was disappointed that he wasn't able to end the war and get some sort of agreement for a ceasefire, at least by January 20th. That said, he has come out with some very strong statements in the past few days, and I find that encouraging. He thinks that President Putin is being unreasonable in not agreeing to a ceasefire, and he's sent a clear message publicly and I'm sure privately to President Putin that if he continues to be stubborn in this regard and not at least go to an immediate ceasefire, then he intends to give President Zelensky of Ukraine and the Ukrainian armed forces all the equipment and all the military capacity that we could give them short of nuclear weapons, and to help President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people fight into a better position. So that's the position of President Trump at this point, and I think it's a good negotiating position, and frankly one that I would have urged the president to adopt that if he had asked me my opinion.
Do you think it's time, Senator Wicker, for our European allies to shoulder more of the burden of supporting Ukraine?
I'm glad you mentioned that because yes, and the president made it clear. We want the United States to spend 5% of our economy on national defense. Until now, the agreement among NATO countries, our strongest allies in Europe, was that they would spend 2% of their economy on national defense. And the president just last week, in his first week of office, said that really ought to be 5% for all of us in NATO, and particularly the ones right there in Europe who have the most to lose if President Putin succeeds in abandoning 70 years of international policy that you just don't invade a neighbor because you think they're weaker and have less military capacity. So I think that's a good sign. I think they, and frankly, over the last 2 years, actually almost 3 years now of conflict in Ukraine, our NATO allies have come up to that 2%, except for just a handful, 5 or 6 of them are not quite there. But they're doing a lot more, and that has been at the urging of Americans. I think it's going to increase and be a lot stronger now that Donald Trump is president.
Thank you for that. Okay, well, now President Trump has discussed takeovers of Greenland, the Panama Canal, and even Canada. So he has not ruled out some form of military force in some cases. Now, what are your thoughts on the president's remarks?
Well, I do think purchasing Greenland would be a good idea, and I think it would be in the best interest of our NATO allies, and frankly, in the best interest of Denmark. But that would be a negotiating thing. You know, I think you and I and the American public have seen the president's use of hyperbole and rhetoric over time to make it clear what his hopes and ambitions for the United States and our people are. And so clearly there's not going to be any military action with regard to Greenland or any other country. And clearly I think we all understand that the Canadians are fairly happy where they are. These are aspirational bits of rhetoric that are beneficial to the president in making his foreign policy dreams and aspirations for Americans.
Okay, let's discuss some things that happened over the weekend. Senator Wicker, we saw over the weekend how Colombia and Mexico denied U.S. military flights carrying deported immigrants. The president threatened Colombia with a 25% tariff if it continued to refuse these repatriation flights. Now, should we expect more tariff threats along these lines, and do you agree with them?
Well, I think the president made his point and actually achieved a foreign policy objective with regard to Colombia. First thing we need to point out is that it is a matter of international law that countries who have citizens in a fellow country illegally have to take them back. That's not something new. And so really, according to international law and custom, Colombia was honor bound, duty bound, and legally bound to take those back. And so when they refused to do so, President Trump, I think, came down with a pretty strong response. And basically, I think the president of Colombia decided, well, actually, we need to do the accepted norm internationally and take our own citizens back. They were over here in the United States illegally, and so he returned to reason. And my hope is that we'll continue our strong, good relationship with Colombia. We've given them a lot of help over the last 3 decades. Plan Colombia has rid much of the territory of Colombia of the drug cartels. They've moved elsewhere, but we have a good relationship, and I think we will continue to have one. So right now, there will not be any tariffs either imposed by them or by President Trump, and that's probably a good result.
Gotcha. We're almost done here, Senator Wicker. The administration's crackdown on illegal immigrants seemed to kick into high gear over the weekend with raids and arrests nationwide. What is your understanding of the president's strategy here, and why is it necessary in your view?
Well, my goodness, this is one of the main reasons that the president won not only a huge electoral victory in the November general election, but also he won the popular vote. Also, the people of the United States don't understand why our government has had custody of illegal immigrants who have come here contrary to the law and then violated more laws and therefore in custody of our jails and prisons. Why in the world we would keep them here, house them, and feed them in prisons when they actually belong to another country? And so to me, it was absolutely logical that the people in jail and in prison were here illegally and had committed yet another crime should be sent back first. And that's what the director of this program decided to do. We knew where they were, we knew where they were being housed in jails and prisons. And so that was a good first start. Also, the people that we know of that are here illegally, but sort of flouting it because certain cities have decided that they just will not cooperate with the federal government and with the majority of public thought in America. They are being shown that indeed, as a matter of federal policy, the president has this right. So I think this is I think this is good policy, and I think it's going to be quite popular with the American people. They wonder why it's gone on this long. And this is something that was relatively new under the Biden administration. Even when Biden was vice president under President Obama's 2 terms, there was much more border enforcement. And then when Mr. Biden became president, he just let things go wild, and the American people have had enough of it, and the people of Mississippi have had enough of it. So I think he's on the right track, and we'll let these other countries deal with their criminal element, rather than asking you and me and the taxpayers of the United States to pay our taxes to house and feed them.
Now, following up to that question, thousands of migrants, documented and otherwise, work in 2 critical industries right here in Mississippi, farming and construction. How will Mississippi be able to sustain the loss of a sizable portion of our workforce in those sectors?
Well, there are visa programs that we use for most of those individuals, and I think the president let a little debate occur within the new administration several days ago about that, and he came down on the side of, yes, we need to continue these visa programs for hourly workers and for jobs that we're simply not able to fill in the United States of America. I think those will continue. And frankly, he's also said the first people we're going to go after are the people causing the problem, that are violating the laws, or that we already know about. They've come in here, they've claimed that they have political reasons to claim this very rare asylum status, and they've been untruthful about that, or certainly exaggerated about that. And those people, in an orderly manner, need to go back where they actually are citizens, because they're not eligible under the laws of the United States of America. But the first people we're going after, and there are millions of them, are the people who are problems for our society. We know where they are. Most of them are locked up, and I think it's going to be overwhelmingly popular and overwhelmingly beneficial. And we will still have those visas and temporary work permits for people who work in important industries. Glad you pointed that out, and let me make it clear where I stand on that.
Well, thank you for your response, Senator Wicker. Okay, finally, Mr. Trump, he wants to look at overhauling or even elimination of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So share with me, what are your thoughts on that, given just how much support Mississippi often gets from FEMA disaster relief?
Well, the money for disaster relief comes from the taxpayers. It goes to the federal agency, where we obviously have to pay for quite a bit of bureaucracy and workers at the federal level in Washington, D.C., and at the regional level. At every level, national, regional, and state, they take a chunk out of it for administrative costs. If the president is proposing that we take the taxpayer money and let it be administered by people in Mississippi who are very, very, very well accustomed to dealing with this and who understand better than anybody else the needs at the local level, if he's talking about cutting out 2 levels of bureaucracy, regional and national, then I'm all for him. Part of the problem we've had, and you can ask mayors in central Mississippi, and certainly county and local and state officials dealing with what we've had to go through around the Gulf Coast with hurricanes, and they will tell you that much of the problem we have is the money is sitting there in Washington, D.C., or at the regional level, and the bureaucrats simply bring in requirement after requirement after requirement, and the money still, years and years after the storm has come through, still hasn't gotten to the local governments where it can be used.
Any other topics you'd like to talk about?
I'll be glad to come back on and chat with you at any time. I appreciate you giving me some airtime and giving me a chance to visit with my friends back home in Mississippi.
We appreciate you so much here on 12 News. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, ma'am.
We have more from that interview and last week's interview with Senator Hyde-Smith on our YouTube and podcast channels. We're back with Governor Tate Reeves after a break.
I fundamentally do not believe that we should be taxing people's work in the state of Mississippi as long as we can prove to the people and to all of the interested sectors of our economy that we can do it and still provide all of the core functions of government that we need to provide at the levels that they need to be provided at and take care of our basic needs.
That's Trey Lamar, House Ways and Means Chairman, talking last week about the House's bill to eliminate state income tax. Tax reforms is one of the key debates of the 2025 legislative session. Governor Tate Reeves had plenty to say about his preferences in Wednesday's State of the State address.
Governor Tate Reeves delivered his State of the State address on the steps of the Capitol. He started his speech by saying 2024 will be a hard act to follow. Reeves discussed how the state always needs more money flowing through the state. He told Mississippians that he knows how to make this possible.
We must be at the front of the pack in the race to have more power. In today's world, power is the key to prosperity.
The economy is a frequent talking point, but Jim Rosenblatt found it interesting that the governor talked about power in his speech.
That was not a theme that was really spoken about 4 years ago. But now power seems to drive economic development.
Reeves stated that 2024 was the single greatest year for the Mississippi economy. He challenged every company to come build their products in Mississippi. He talked about how more than $32 billion has been announced for private sector investments since 2020.
This $32 billion is helping to create thousands of jobs for the people who live here. It's helping families fill up their gas tanks, and it's helping put food on their table.
The House recently passed an income tax elimination plan. House Bill 1 would result in an estimated $1.1 billion income tax cut for Mississippians in the next 10 years. The ultimate goal is to eliminate the income tax completely. Now he's calling on the Senate to pass the bill.
I urge our friends in the Senate to take action on this historic legislation. If there's something in the bill you don't like, let's talk about it.
Vice Chairman of the Senate Democratic Caucus, David Blunt, said abolishing the state income tax is irresponsible. He had this to say before the governor's speech.
The income tax pays for 1/3 of the overall general fund budget, more than $2 billion a year. Republicans haven't said how they would make up this amount or what they would cut.
Blunt says the economy has seen a windfall of federal money in recent years, and Mississippi will soon be back to where it's always been.
If you have comments or questions about today's show or a suggestion for an interview or segment, please just drop us a line. Email our producers. The address is news@wjtv.com. Well, we do want to thank Senator Roger Wicker for taking time with us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Thao Ta for Byron Brown. All of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.